Hi, my name is Terry Robinson with you here this week for midweek, and we're looking at some things that Jesus did when he was interacting with God because it can help us in how we interact with God. The purpose of interacting, we've heard taught to us through Marcio and Alan, is so that we can know God, so that we can grow closer to him in intimacy. And it tells us right here in 1 Timothy 4:7 that we're not supposed to waste our time, that we're supposed to train ourselves to be godly, that physical training is good, but training for godliness is much better, promising benefits in this life and in the life to come. So why does this matter? Because of the benefits, yes, but it also helps us redirect our passions. So often we get caught up in things that matter to us, and we're putting ourselves first. It may be through our children, through our families, through our work, but that seems to consume our minds and take precedence over everything. But when we have our time set aside for God, you might hear the word called spiritual disciplines. These are things that are going to help us know God better. We have to be careful because in that word discipline and in the words training that we heard in 1 Timothy, we sometimes think, well, this is what we need to do, and it becomes about what we do instead of why we do it. So two things that we're going to be looking at this week are prayer and fasting. Very important things in our getting to know God better and to go deeper with him. So when we're looking at prayer and fasting, I wanted to look at first the examples that Jesus gave us. And I was looking in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where it talks to us about what Jesus did while he was here on earth. And there are so many different things. I encourage you to look through it too and find where you saw Jesus praying, looking up to heaven. And what you'll notice is that he was praying in gardens, on a mountain. He was praying in the wilderness. He was praying by himself, with a small group, with large groups. He was praying with short sentences. He was praying long. In John 17, we have a whole chapter of Jesus' prayer about himself, about the disciples, and about the believers who would come after the disciples. You could take a month looking at each verse a day and just sit in John 17 and Jesus' prayer, and you would get so much out of that. So I challenge you to do that. The other thing, we saw Jesus' examples of praying, but I also wanted to talk about what Jesus told us about praying. In Matthew 6:5-13, he tells us that when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray publicly on the street or in the synagogues where everyone can see them. I tell you the truth, that's all the reward they'll ever get. But when you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father in private. Then your Father who sees everything will reward you. So again, it's not about the actual discipline of praying. It's why you're praying that matters. It's not about, what kind of show it is in front of other people. It's about communicating with God. He tells us not to keep repeating the same words over and over again because it's not going to be effective in our hearts, in our connecting with God. He then goes on in Matthew 6 to teach us about praying like this, and we hear the Lord's Prayer. And I could go through so many different things, but I think the thing I really want us to take away from this is that it starts out with our Father in heaven. It starts with God. And that is the point, that it starts with God first. And then it goes into what we need each day and our daily needs, our spiritual needs. But that's second. God is first. The other thing that I noticed in that prayer is that when it starts with Our Father in Heaven, it reminded me of what I read in Revelation. So when I'm praying to God and it's something that I need my big God to do, I picture in Revelation 4 what John told us. He said that things like this: I saw a throne in heaven and someone sitting on it. The one sitting on the throne was as brilliant as gemstones, like jasper and carnelian, and the glow of an emerald circled his throne like a rainbow. From the throne came flashes of lightning and the rumble of thunder, and in front of the throne were 7 torches with burning flames. In front of the throne was a shiny sea of glass, sparkling like crystal. That's our Father God, who's in heaven, on his throne. It's so much about that connection. This is who we're praying to. Now, I also prayed to Jesus, and that seems to me, for me, a more personal time. And when I am praying to him, I am picturing myself on a porch swing, he's sitting next to me, and I'm just going through those things that are intimate and personal and what I really need. But again, the point is, in our prayers, God comes first. I was talking to some of my adult children about prayer and what that meant to them, and my daughter-in-law said that at night when she's trying to go to bed, her mind is swirling. What she will do is she will start thinking what she's thankful for. So she starts praying to God and looking around and thinking about what she's grateful for. And so that focuses her mind, gives her peace so that she can go on off to sleep. And I was talking to my son about what makes prayer difficult. Why do we not pray? And we were saying that maybe we don't feel comfortable praying. So how do we get there? And he was saying what makes him comfortable with praying is knowing who God is. The more confidence that he has in God, the more comfortable he is talking to him at any time, at any place, in any situation, with any emotions that he's feeling. And that's the purpose of reading our Bible, so that we can get confidence in who God is, in his attributes, knowing how much he cares for us, what he wants to do in our lives. So what I want you to think about here is to make prayer intentional until it becomes natural. And that is the whole purpose of these spiritual disciplines, is that they're intentional acts that eventually foster our relationship with God, that becomes a natural relationship, and you don't even have to think about it. So let's look at fasting. Well, the purpose of fasting is to enhance our prayer. We saw that in Ezra 8:23. It talks about strengthening prayer. It talks about giving us guidance. Fasting is a way to express grief. It's a way to ask God for protection, for deliverance. And it's also a way to humble ourselves. And it talks about that in Ezra 8:21 and Psalm 35:13. And I mention this because I'm going to bring this up at the end too. So humbling yourselves, it's taking a back seat. It's putting God first. We saw that when we were talking about prayer. The same thing. And that's probably why it kind of supersizes or levels up prayer, is because it's putting God first again. Jesus gave us an example of fasting when he fasted for 40 days. And then he also taught us about fasting in Matthew 6:16 through 18. He told us not to make a show of it either, that, it's okay to talk about it, but it's going to be something you want to talk about with others after it's over with. And it can be encouraging and motivating. I've heard some friends tell me about what they were fasting about and how they saw God move. And it is important to share that as a way of in our community of believers. So this is what he had to say also about fasting that I thought was interesting. In Matthew 9, so this is a few chapters later, we had some disciples of John the Baptist coming to Jesus and asking him, well, why don't your disciples fast like we do and the Pharisees do? And Jesus replied, well, do wedding guests mourn when celebrating with the groom? Of course not. But someday the groom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast. And he's talking about himself as being the groom there. And then he says, besides, who would patch old clothing with new cloth? For the new patch would shrink and rip away from the old cloth, leaving an even bigger tear. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the old skins would burst from the pressure, spilling the wine and ruining the skins. New wine is stored in new wineskins, so that both are preserved. I had to think about that for a little bit. What was Jesus saying here? And there's two thoughts behind that. One being that, if you're a new believer, this may not be for you. Fasting may not be for you yet. If you have been a believer for a while, then maybe you need to be challenged to try fasting. I think also the other idea behind it is that Jesus was going to present a new way of fasting, still for the same reasons, still about the heart, still about God, but it may not look like the way the Jews have been doing it for centuries and centuries. The purpose doesn't change, but the procedure might. The reason we fast, to interact with God, remains the same, but the way we fast may change, which, that means that there is no set way. You may fast for morning to evening. You may fast for a 24-hour period, a 3-day, a 7-day, 21, 40, I don't know. And what you fast, that also we have freedom in that. Food may be a problem because you have health issues. So let it be something. I've heard a friend of mine talk about fasting from social media. It may be fasting from TV. It may be fasting from radio, which I have done before because that's what I felt God was telling me to do. So it's okay to have that freedom. If you're not sure, find another believer who may be further along in your perspective that can help you, that might even be a buddy with you. It's not something to be afraid of. It's also not something to be proud about, as Jesus told us in Matthew 6, that we're not to make a show of it. So our church is going to be having a 21-day of prayer in this month. So maybe you'll consider giving up something along with praying during that time. I talked to you before about humbling yourselves and how that's related to fasting. So maybe while we're in that 21-day of prayer, you would consider fasting from this verse in 2 Chronicles. It talks about our nation. It says, at times I might shut up the heavens so that no rain falls, or command grasshoppers to devour your crops, or send plagues among you. Then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, could be fasting, and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and restore the land. So maybe that's something that you could be praying for, our country, our nation, during our 21 days of fasting for our church. Well, I appreciate you letting me talk to you today, and look forward to seeing you next week in midweek.
Thank you for watching and for spending time with us. We hope you're more encouraged, more energized, and more equipped in your relationship with Jesus. If you're new, here's what we'd like you to do. Go ahead and text NEW to this number right here, because we know your time is valuable. So we want to send you a gift simply to say thank you for spending time with us. Seeing people come alive is what we're all about here at The Crossings, and we want you to partner with us in seeing people say yes to Jesus. And one of the best ways to do that is through generosity. We have 2 ways to give, and whenever you go to our website or you use our text to give service, both of those will take you to a secure giving platform. We want you to stay connected with us. So like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Instagram. Thank you for watching, and have a blessed day.